Hey everyone, I'm smiling because I'm happy today. We have 1,406 subscribers. Every new subscriber means the world to me. I know that many of you are sharing these videos with others and our community is growing. I really appreciate your help in doing that. If you're new to the channel, welcome aboard. I welcome all of the comments, the feedbacks, even criticisms, anything that you have that's constructive. Any feedback, I read your comments and I respond to about 90% of the comments. If you find this video helpful or others, please forward it to other people. A lot of the videos that I create are designed to help you make it home another day safely. And this might be one of those videos once we get into it. One thing I want to cover very briefly is my shirt. My shirt does say professional consultant. I've had quite a bit of people reach out to me this past month and ask what my hourly rate is for consulting for being a professional consultant. They need some type of service, some consultation. Guys, I actually mentioned this in another video. If you didn't watch the other video, don't worry about it at all. But I am not a for hire professional consultant. The reason why I chose this labeling on my shirt is because I couldn't find anything else to put on here. What do I want? What am I supposed to put? YouTuber? YouTuber on my shirt. I needed to put something that portrays a professional image, so I put professional consultant. Now I've done professional consulting in the past for all types of companies, private security firms, private investigator firms. I've done quite a bit of consulting, but right now at this moment as we speak, and even next year and the year after, I am not for hire. So let's just make that clear. Now, usually when somebody asks what my hourly rate is for professional consulting, they usually have a question. Now, if you have a question that's not covered in this book, The Private Patrol Operator, or The California Legal Investigator, or the questions not answered on any of my videos, and thank you for your patience for scrolling down all the videos I have, and it's not on the website, the state of California website, the Bureau of Security and Investigative Services. For those of you who are in California, if the issue is not on that website, feel free to reach out to me through email and just ask me. So that's what people who ask for, whether I provide consulting services or how much, that's usually what they want. They just need a question answered. As my disclaimer in this video and all others, I do not work for the Bureau of Security and Investigative Services. They're the regulatory arm in the state of California that regulate private security professionals and private investigators. I don't work for them at all. I do not represent any law enforcement agency, any government agency, any employer, and any advice that I give in this video, it's not to be taken as professional advice. It's not considered to be training. I may mention the words training, but this is not actual training. I encourage you to bring this video and have a discussion with somebody who's qualified in your state, your jurisdiction. Let's get started with the topic. So if you are on a post, most of the time you're going to probably approach a vehicle, a suspicious vehicle, because you feel safe, you feel comfortable approaching this vehicle. Maybe this vehicle is parked in an area where other cars usually don't park. Maybe the vehicle's running, you don't see a lot of movement inside of the vehicle, but there's something that tells you that you need to approach the vehicle. Now, when you approach this vehicle and you actually see somebody inside, there's an issue of whether or not you have to identify yourself as private security. If you are chiming in from another state, I just made a comment to somebody who was chiming in from the East Coast area. Welcome to the channel. If you're in another state, I really want to hear your feedback. Does your state make it mandatory that you have to identify yourself as a private security officer or private security guard? Is that a requirement? And I would say no in almost every state. Now, I could be wrong. I'm probably wrong. That's why I'm reaching out to you guys. But in California, the answer to that is no. Next, we look at the case studies, the case laws. Do you have to identify yourself as a private security? And again, that is going to be dependent on the jurisdiction. Now, it's also going to depend on what the issue is. So if this is some type of use of force issue and this person mistaken you as the bad guy, the bad person, well, I think identifying yourself or your failure to identify yourself as private security is going to be an issue. In law enforcement, it does become an issue when the law enforcement officer doesn't identify themselves as a law enforcement officer. And in many cases, such as resisting arrest or battery on an officer, those charges can easily be dropped if the defendant had a reasonable likelihood, or it was acceptable, okay, in the jury's perspective, that this person may have not been a peace officer or a police officer performing his duties. That's why when you're working undercover in law enforcement, you're supposed to mention the words police, who you work for, and then give some type of order, show some type of ID, show some type of badge. But for private security, it's going to be an issue when there's a use of force issue and that person resisted or used force against you because they didn't know who you are. So that's when it will be an issue. So when I'm approaching these cars as private security, I personally, most of the time, don't say I'm private security. Now, here's why. My uniform alone says that I'm private security, and I follow the state guidelines. The state requires me to have a badge, or requires you if you're in California to have a badge that says private security, the name of the security company, and the ID number. And on both shoulder patches, you have to have the name of the company and the words private security. Now, if you can't tell that the words private security are private security, you can't tell that this person is a private security officer, even considering that he or she's wearing the uniform. You can't tell. Well, that's your own ignorance. And in the court's perspective, they're gonna, if this is a use of force issue, they're gonna look at the overall situation and they're gonna put themselves in the defendant's shoes and ask, would a reasonable person believe that you were a private security guard or private security officer? Would the reasonable person believe? And this is what I would do as a private security professional. If I have to appear in court for maybe a preliminary hearing or a jury trial, I'm going to show up in my uniform. Now, you're not going to be allowed to carry your weapon in there, maybe your belt, without the weapon, and I would go exactly as that. Now, what you can also do is, if you don't want to let everyone know that you're private security, you can always put in a jacket. You can always put a jacket over a uniform, and then in the little waiting area, you might be waiting inside the courtroom or the witness room. When you're called out, you could just take your jacket off, and then everyone will see uniform, and then you're going to testify, if this really happened, to the court, that at the time when you make contact with this person, you were wearing the uniform that you have on right now. Okay, and then the court's going to look at it like, wait a minute, this fool over here in the defendant's chair can't tell if this is a private security guard. Yeah, no, I'm starting not to believe this guy. I'm going to believe the private security professional instead of the defendant who's just making up excuses. Okay? Now, the only time, well, one of the times where I would actually identify myself as a private security officer would be if my identity as a private security officer is an issue. So if this person is asking whether I'm a private security guard or not, if they're asking me, well, I'm going to tell them the truth, and yes, I'm private security, but just don't say yes. I'd say, yes, I'm private security. I've been hired by the owner of the property to manage who comes on the property and also manage who comes out. I need to see some type of ID. Even an employee ID will suffice. If not, I have authority by the manager to require you to leave the property. And if you don't leave the property, then I could place you under arrest for trespassing. Now, that conversation that we just had, in that conversation, you're not impersonating a peace officer or law enforcement officer or federal agent. Not at all. And what gets private security officers in trouble is when they start impersonating a law enforcement officer. Now, again, I'll say this. If you're wearing the correct uniform, maybe your mandated uniform, you're following state guidelines, if this person still doesn't understand that you're a private security officer, well, again, that's their own ignorance, and you're going to wear the same uniform when you go to court, okay? So if they ask, I will tell them the truth. Yes, I'm private security. Now, for me personally, I just find that if the person thinks that I'm in law enforcement, that it actually works to my benefit, because most of the time, if they find out, if they think that you're in law enforcement or you have some type of law enforcement status, most of the time they cooperate. I'm not saying every time, but most of the time. But sometimes the moment they find out you're private security, again, that perceived authority does go out of the door. And what do you do? I mean, how do you balance this? How do you recover from this? It really depends on the way that you handle people. You have to treat everybody with respect, of course, but the way you carry yourself out, your command of presence. How is your uniform appearing? Do you have your shirts buttoned up? Do you have your shirt tucked in? Is your shirt wrinkled? How's your posture? Are you leaning towards the car like this? Okay, or you're looking down like this. You have this forward posture, or you're rotating your body back and forth because you're not really sure of yourself. Maybe you're pacing back and forth, or you're fidgeting with your hands. This is body language that these bad people read. They're looking at your shoes, make sure that they're somewhat clean. Your pants and your shirt, making sure everything fits. Make sure that you're wearing the belt the way that it should be worn. See, a lot of these people that come out of prison, the parolees, for years, sometimes 20 years, sometimes 30 years, however amount of time that they're locked up, they have plenty of time to monitor the corrections officers, the way that they wear their uniform. And when they see something that just out of the norm, they will perceive you to be somebody that's not very professional, not somebody that has taken care of themselves, and they'll walk all over you to the point where they might introduce violence into the situation. And you don't want that to happen, okay? So if you are, I guess, compromised as private security, I don't really think it's a big deal. It depends on how you carry yourself out. If you're, again, pacing back and forth, unsure yourself, they're gonna walk all over you. Even the way that you're holding the flashlight, the way that you're taking notes, if you do have a notepad out there, I'm telling you, they're watching everything. Now, I don't want you to give others the impression that you are a law enforcement officer, because that is against the law. And how do you get somebody the impression you're a law enforcement officer? Well, if you have perhaps a badge that maybe it says agent, you gotta be really careful, because in California, you say agent, you can get away with maybe a bail enforcement officer wearing a badge that says agent, but as a private security officer, if you have something that says agent, other people are going to think that, some people might think that you're an agent for the government, that you're actually a law enforcement officer. You got to be really careful with the agent stuff. I know some security companies have the words public safety. Again, just follow the guidelines, because public safety, there's police departments in California that they're called the public safety department. I think it's Sunnyvale, where you're a firefighter for the first 12 hours, and then like 8 hours you're a police officer. But anyhow, their department, it may not be Sunnyvale, maybe another department, where the public safety department is really the police department. So be careful with using the words public safety. Okay, have your regular private security lettering. If you have to have the words public safety on somewhere on your patch or your badge, again, make sure that it gets approved through BSIS. That's the regulatory arm in California for security professionals. If they approve it, well, then they approve something that says public safety. I don't think that they're going to approve a lot of lettering that says public safety. But again, it just depends on the overall patch or the badge design. That's all I have. Let me know what you guys think about this video. If you have any comments, suggestions for other videos. What do you do in the field? Do you identify yourself as private security, or do you not, or it depends? Now, this video is not a one-size-fits-all video. There's going to be different circumstances where you might have to just say who you are. Hey, I'm private security. And in other circumstances, it's obvious that you're private security. And then other situations, if you have a patrol car especially, okay, and you have a spotlight on it, and then you have your orange overheads on there, they're orange, okay? In California, law enforcement will have a steady red blue light, steady red solid light in front to signify that you're a law enforcement officer and that you need to stop. And then there's always the blue configuration. But once you introduce orange into the mix and green, well, I think the reasonable person should believe that you're not police. Okay, you're private security. Let me know what you guys think. You guys all take care and be safe.